Hi, I'm Jim. And what does the creation account really tell us about the start of a day and how a day is constructed? I know church doctrines, Judaism, the prevailing concept is that the creation account teaches us that it begins with the evening and ends with the morning. So we have, and there was evening and there was morning, and they think that is the construct of the day. Well, that's what I want to visit today. Now, I have done a more extensive study on this, a longer video that I'm hoping to do today. I hope to keep it kind of short and just get to the point if I can. As far as parsing words, diving in, and try to explain more fully, I'll have to leave it to my other longer video, and you can do your own work as well. With that, let me get started. And I'm going to go to the creation account, and I'm going to read it in the King James Bible because that's just a mainstay. But it also just works for what we're trying to do here. And I'm not going to read all of the creation account. I'm going to read the first 3 days, and then I'll be referencing the fourth day here. So let me get started. In the beginning, God created heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear." And so it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. I know I said I wasn't going to read it, I was just going to reference it, but I'm going to go ahead and read the fourth day as well. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Now, before I start parsing it, let's go and see. Well, let me identify that what is really in question here is this passage. At the end of each day, it reads, "And the evening and the morning were the first day." And then in the second day, it was, "And the evening and the morning were the second day." Third day, "And the evening and the morning were the third day." And the same with the fourth day, "And the evening and the morning were the fourth day." And I'm going to quickly, we're going to look at this in other translations as well, just to see how they are actually handling that translation. Well, here's the NIV, and I'll just stay with verse 5, which is at the end of day 1. "And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day." New Living Translation, "And evening passed, and morning came, marking the first day." English Standard, "And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day." I could keep on going. Here we've got the Berean, "And there was evening, and there was morning." Most of them are going to say something very similar to that. Every once in a while, we get into somebody who is saying a little bit something different. Here's the Holman, where it's saying evening came, and then morning, the first day. And when we get into a couple of the Catholic translations, let's see, here's the Catholic Public Domain, "And it became evening and morning one day." And the New American Bible, "Evening came and morning followed the first day." Okay, so all of these are saying this, "And there was evening and there was morning," or something similar to that. Now, inferred in that, I think, is this concept of their coming to be. This concept of there was something else and then there was something else, a chronology of events. It seems to be inferred in the translations that we've received. And it becomes a little more clear, that inference becomes a little more clear when we see the words, and there came to be. In the Hallelujah scriptures, it says, and then there was, another way of saying something very similar to that. But let's go visit these verses in the Hebrew. So when we go to the interlinear of the Hebrew, what word do we see being translated as, and there was? It's this word, wahai. Let's see if I can. This word wahai, I'm not going to, there it is. Wahai. That's the word that's being translated as, and there was. And let's go to the Strong's definition of it. Well, the Strong's definition of it doesn't give us wahai, it gave us haya. But haya at its root is, it means to be, become, come to pass, exist, happen. So the root word that is leading us to wahai, this haya, has that same inference, that same connotation. It came to be, it becomes, it comes to pass, it exists, it happens. But let's go down, because that is not the word that is being given to us in that passage. Let's move on down to where we see, look at all of these various occurrences of something related to this haya. 1900, I'm sorry, Strong's 1961. Yeah, okay, so that's the Strong's reference, but there are 3,561 occurrences of words that represent something like haya. Here's haya 334 times, but here are all of these variations of it, and included in those variations are the one we're interested in today, which is just the wahai, which is translated for us 781 times. Staying with the definition of you know what, let me go back and let me take a second. Forgive me. So there are 781 occurrences of this this word wahai, which again, just to be clear, is a variation of haya, which is to be, become, come to pass, exist, happen. Well, let's look at how they are being translated, how this word wahai is being translated throughout the rest of Scripture, the other Scriptures. Well, of course, we have the Genesis creation account where it's saying, let there be light. That's the interlinear. Called the night, and there was evening. That's 1:5 that we are in. And there was evening, and there was morning in 1:5 in the interlinear again. Above the expanse, and it was so. So here's the word, and it was so. It came to be, basically. And the expanse of heaven, and there was evening, and there was. Okay, so that's more of the creation account. Let's move out of the creation account and get down into some of the other things where this word's being used. Came, journey, came. So here's the idea, came to be is a journeyed east. Now there was a famine, so there came to be a famine in the land. Came when there was near. Came Abram, and treated her sake and gave. Not sure how that would really play. Came the days of Amraphel. Become, the sun was going down. So I think we're seeing affirmation of the concept of their coming to be. So when we are working with these various translations, and they are saying, and there was evening and there was morning the first day, well then I think it's fair to say that it is reasonable, certainly reasonable, and probable that they are trying to infer that there came to be. So something preceded it, and then, or there came to be the next thing, which in our situation is the evening here. So let's go back and think about, look at this passage and think it through. So again, the common and go-to, too quick, too easy, just because you've been told, people are saying, and there was evening in the morning, first day. See, evening starts the day. It's not that simple. And it's not even, really, if you give any thought, any critical think to it, you'll realize that that cannot be saying that the evening is the start of the day. Let's look at before I even go there, let me just say that I've heard people talk about as evidence that that evening and darkness starts the day. And that's because they point to Genesis 1 where darkness was upon the face of the deep and it was first. I suppose, but they're inferring an awful lot. Nothing is said about a day. First of all, nothing is said about the construct of day throughout the entire passage. It's all inferred. But if you're going to infer that darkness, since darkness was upon the face of the deep, you're going to have to define how long darkness was there. So how long was that day? I don't really know. But if you're going to stay with that type of rationale, then when we get to the first day and we see the first thing that he does is he separates light, and there was light and he saw that it was good, and then he divided the light from the darkness, and he called the light day and the darkness he called night. Well, if you're going to suggest order because he's referencing something first, well, then the first thing he created was light and separated it from the darkness. So that was the first thing of the day. But that's not my point, because I don't really want to parse that. I just know that there are people arguing that as a rationale for why evening is the start of the day. But let's look at this first day. First of all, he said, after he has moved upon the face of the water, the first thing he did, he says, let there be light, and there was light. So I was good, and he divided the day and the night. And then there came to be evening, and then there came to be morning the first day. So what is the first thing that he did? Activity. He got busy, and he created light, and then he separated light and darkness and created day and night that first day. And then at the end of the first day, what happens? That was the first day. Then we start day 2. And what do we see first happening in day 2? He gets up and he starts, well, not that he gets up, because I doubt he sleeps. But the first thing he does is, as activity ensues again, is he says, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. And he divides the waters and he creates the firmament. That's his activity on day 2. And then there came to be evening, and then there came to be morning the second day. Let me also take opportunity here that we know, and I'll point it out on an illustration I'm getting ready to give you in a few moments, but between evening and morning is night. Not talking about it, but there is night, which is the darkness that is in between evening and morning. Okay, and then what happens on the third day? At the end of the second day, morning is the end of the second day, and then he starts again on the third day with a flurry of activities. He divides the waters unto one place and the dry land into another, and he starts creating and separating amongst and on the land. And he does all of this, and then he says, and the evening and the morning were the third day. So, and then the evening and the morning were the third day, to complete out the day. So he completes all of his work, and then there was evening, and then there was morning. And on the fourth day, what did he do? He gets up. So evening and then morning ends the third day. And then we have the fourth day. He gets up and he says, let there be lights. And he begins creating all the lights in the firmament, sun, moon, stars. And then there was evening, and then there were morning, the fourth day. So what is the pattern we're seeing over and over again? We're seeing activity, and then evening, and then we have to infer night, and then morning. This is the pattern we're seeing with every day that he's referencing. Let me see if I can illustrate this for you. Okay, so in this illustration, I have presented the two competing ways to look at Genesis and all of the accounts of the day. The first one being a twilight start to the day, which is sunset, and the second one being a daytime start to the day. And actually, the second one in this on this page is really the first one I'm going to visit, because I'm going to kind of illustrate, I plan to illustrate the activity of those days on this daytime start of the day, which I favor, of course, because it makes when you think about it, it just absolutely, without contradiction, without any difficulties, supports the text of the creation account. With that, let me get started. So we have darkness on the land. Let me just say, here's darkness on the land. Terrible writing, but you get it. This is the state of this before he starts his activity. But what happens? The first thing he does is he says, let there be light, and then he separates light from the darkness, calling the light day and the darkness night. That's his activity on the first day. And then he says, and then there was evening, and then there was morning. That's what he says. And we know by inference that night is between evening and morning. So the first thing that we had happen on day 1 is creation, work. work and activity on this day. And then there was evening, and then there was nighttime, and then there was morning. So, and then morning ends the day. We go on to day 2. And what does he do on day 2? Well, he makes the firmament. So he works and he creates the firmament on day 2. And then he says, and then there was evening and a morning, and then there was morning, day 2. And we know, again, that night is between evening and morning, so we have night in between. And because he also, one other thing I would say is he divided day and night, and so in each day will be day and night, daytime and nighttime. Let's move on to the third day. What does he do on the third day? Activity, work. The first thing he does is get up and start working and separates waters and land and creates seas, starts creating the plant life and different things of that nature. And then there was evening. Then there's nighttime, not said, but inferred. And then there was morning, ending the day again, once again. And then what happens on the fourth day? Well, he creates the sun, moon, and stars and places them in the firmament for time and seasons, and also to create light on the earth and on the day. And so, after his activity of creating all those things in the firmament, then he says, and there was evening and there was morning, day 4. Let me make some additional comments here, because throughout the first 3 days, what was the light source? It was not the sun. It was something else. What was the light source if not the sun? And if there was no sun, then what is the light source in the twilight? Did twilight mean something on the first 3 days different than what it would mean today? Because today we know we have sunlight in the sky. We have light and darkness mixed. Well, that light and darkness wasn't related to the sun. The mixing of the light and darkness in the twilight and the evening and the morning of the first 3 days did not involve the sun. But starting in the fourth day, it began to illuminate the earth. The sun illuminated the daytime, and the moon and stars illuminated the nighttime. Now, there is a reference in Scripture that in the temple, once Yahushua and Yahweh come back with the New Jerusalem, that there will be no sun and moon in the temple area or in the city, because the sun and Yahweh will be our light. And I suppose that might be a return to the type of light that we had on days 1 through 3. Topic for another day, but of interest here. Now let me juxtapose this. Let me put this divider here, and let me juxtapose this against working through those scriptures. If we have truly an evening, which is a twilight start of the day here. So the very first thing, if that's occurring in each day, is that we have a twilight. We have an evening. And then the second thing we're going to have is nighttime. And then we're going to have morning. And then we have no mention of day, except for what? The activity, the work that he has done. There's no mention of nighttime or day. Only evening and morning. 2 twilights. Why do we not have the mention of nighttime and daytime? Well, we don't really have the mention of nighttime. I can speculate, and that's all I'm going to do here. We don't really have the mention of nighttime because there's no activity there. It's rest. There's just nothing going on between the twilight in the west, which is evening, and the twilight in the east, which is morning. There's nothing happening. I think that's why he's silent there. And then he doesn't reference daytime with activity, but all of the activity is suggestive of daytime. But even if you weren't taking it that way, still, when then did he do all that activity? When on day 1 did he separate the light and the darkness? All that activity, because then you have evening and then you have morning. When on this construct did he do that? Did he do it at evening? Did he do it in the morning? On day 2, when he created the firmament, when did he do it? Did he do it after morning in the daylight hours? Did he do it during the evening time? A short period of time? Did he do it at night? Did he work at night? I get that he could work at night, but did he? That's just not what we see drawn out in the passages. And if he did his work during the day, after end of the day, because morning ends the day, Do you see the complications? I hope you see the complications that this presents. To just quickly say, because it says, and then there was evening, or and there was evening, and there was morning, to suggest that evening and then morning is the construct of a day is too trite. It's not thinking it through, and it doesn't work. You have to really start speculating. You have to get imaginative. It doesn't flow with the passages. It doesn't make sense. Because where is the third day where we're separating land and sea? When is it happening? Evening, nighttime, morning, or daytime? At the end of the day? That's not how the passages are reading. And when we create the sun, moon, and stars, when did he do that? Evening? Nighttime, morning, after it ends on day 4. I hope you can see how problematic that is. Okay, but I'll just say in closing as I return, if you will start the day with the daytime, which begins as soon as the sun crests the sky and we have sun in the sky. That starts your day. We have daytime, the beginning of a day. If you accept that, then all of the Genesis account works. We have the work activity, then we have evening, then we have night, then we have morning. Simple. And that is the easy construct. Please think it through. Do not just accept the teachings you've heard all your life through church doctrine and through Judaism and references to Judaism. Because really, if you're part of the Torah community and you're trying to go back to understand what you're supposed to be doing in Torah, well, don't go back to Judaism for your guidance, because Judaism came about in 175 BC, or around then, as the sons of Zadok were removed and exiled from the high priesthood, and we end up with basically false religion, Judaism, Pharisaicalism, the oral traditions, the Talmud, all those things beginning in those days, in the couple centuries prior to Messiah coming on the scene. So don't turn to Judaism or their interpretations. I know they like to really try to get really with the word Areb and some of the words that are used for evening translations. They try to read so much into it. The Hebrew words are so much bigger than can be translated, I suppose, but they don't need to be bigger, really, to get the meaning out of it. And I think sometimes when I hear that, it's just trying to over-spiritualize, over-complicate so that you can conflate the meanings. Anyway, with that, thank you. If you find value in what I'm sharing, then please like, share, subscribe, and may you have a good day.